What if I told you that one spark in the rain at Lambeau turned a rivalry game into a statement about who the Detroit Lions really are? What if one defender, in one of the loudest stadiums in football, forced the entire field to bend to his tempo like he grabbed the remote and said, "We're playing at my speed tonight"? And what if that same defender didn't just make plays, he changed the psychology of the game, snap by snap, read by read, until Green Bay's rhythm sounded like static on an old radio? Before you think you know where I'm going with this, breathe. Replay the images in your head. The slippery turf, the sideline chatter, the crowd roaring, the pre-snap shifts. Feel the tension of a rivalry that's older than some of the seats in that stadium. Now ask yourself, when does a game stop being about calls and coverages and start being about presence? The kind of presence that creeps into the other quarterback's timing and lives there rent-free? Here's what we're going to do today. We're going to peel back how Detroit's defense opened the night, why the early body language mattered, the subtle assignment tweaks you might have missed, and the way one player kept resetting the emotional thermostat for the entire unit. We'll talk about leverage, spacing, disguise, and those hidden third downs where you either steal a possession or surrender momentum. We'll look at how the Lions handled motion, how they trapped the middle, and how they turned yards after catch into yards after contact at Detroit's price. And yes, we'll get to the moment that flipped the narrative and what it means for the rest of the season. You're watching Lions News Fan Report. If you ride with this team the way we do, join the huddle now. Tap subscribe, drop a like, and hit that bell so you're in here the second we go live after every game. This community breaks down the details nobody else sees, and we do it with the honesty of people who actually feel this team in our chest. Now, let's set the scene the right way. Lambeau in the rain isn't just a weather report, it's a personality test. Everything slows down a half second, and that half second reveals who you are. Are you patient, or are you guessing? Do you close your hips with balance, or do you chase with your eyes? Detroit came in with the look of a team that wasn't there to survive the environment, but to use it. You could see it in the way they fit the run inside out, shoulders square, forcing the ball where help was waiting. You could see it in the pursuit angles, not frantic but inevitable. And you could definitely see it in the calls, measured, disciplined, almost daring Green Bay to be precise for 4 quarters. But rivalry nights are never clean, and that's the point. You win them by controlling the streaks, the 2 or 3 drives where everything can come undone if your poise fractures. On those drives, your communicator on the back end matters more than your pass rush win rate. The player who can diagnose formation tells, who can bait a throw without giving away the shop, who can arrive at the catch point with violence and control. That's the player who steals oxygen from the other sideline. Detroit had that presence. Detroit imposed that presence. We talk all the time about tone setters on offense. A guard who buries a 3-tech on the first inside zone. A wideout who drags a corner 5 extra yards to announce the day's physics. Defenses have tone setters too. And you know them by the way your shoulders relax on 3rd and 6 because you trust the bracket to hold. When that presence shows up early, quarterbacks start double-checking the grass in front of their slants. Coordinators think twice about that cute shot off motion, and receivers hear footsteps that weren't there an hour ago. It's not mystical. It's repetition, trust, and a willingness to live at the edge without falling off it. So let's talk about the edge. Detroit lived there tonight. They disguised rotation without getting light in the seam. They baited throws to grass that wasn't actually there. They walled off crossers and challenged catchers to secure the ball through contact. The whole thing felt like chess played with shoulder pads, only one side kept reaching the same checkmate 3 different ways. That's culture. That's coaching. But it's also a player refusing to be ordinary in a stadium that punishes ordinary. Here's the truth you felt in your gut even before the replays. Brian Branch was the hinge of this game. Not just a highlight merchant. Not just a hit you'll see clipped and shared 1,000 times, but the gravitational center of Detroit's defensive identity in Green Bay. The Branch was huge. He was the timing hammer in the middle of the field, the voice that says, not here, not now, when the other team thinks they've created leverage. He closed space like a door slamming in the wind, and he did it again and again until Green Bay's root tree looked like a set of discouraged choices. Is that a fact or hype? Let's be honest about what's measurable and what's felt. The measurable parts show up in the stops that forced punts, the third downs that died on the spot, the throws that arrived a beat late because the window was murkier than the quarterback expected. The felt parts are simpler. Every time Green Bay tried to create a conflict read, Branch turned it into a punishment read. Every time they tried to stretch Detroit horizontally, Branch made the field feel smaller. That's not speculation. That's football language written in collisions and altered landmarks. Were there moments where emotion spilled over? Absolutely. Rivalry games in the rain are laboratories for human nature. Tempers flare, boundaries test themselves, and the line between intimidation and indiscipline gets thinner than the chalk line on the sideline. But remember this, leadership isn't the absence of fire. It's the ability to point it where it hurts the opponent most. When Detroit needed composure, Branch recalibrated and went back to work. That's the growth you demand from a tone setter. That's the maturity that separates a viral clip from a winning night. Let's dig into the bones of why he mattered so much. Watch how Detroit handled motion. They didn't over-rotate the back end. They leveraged the new strength without exposing the weak hook. And they trusted Branch to be the hinge when the picture changed post-snap. That trust let the corners play aggressive trail in moments and let the linebackers play downhill without fearing the throw behind them. On the few snaps where Green Bay hinted at a shot, Branch's alignment shaded just enough to threaten the window force the quarterback into a check that the Lions were baiting all along. That's football aikido, using the other guy's plan to move him where you wanted him in the first place. Then there's the tackling. The box score tells you a number. The truth tells you a temperature. Branch's hits had a message. Finish forward. Finish together. Finish in a way that makes the next throw feel like a business decision. When a safety starts stacking those finishes, the entire defense stands a little taller. Edge rushers time the snap freer. Corners sit on routes with more conviction. Defensive tackles throw their hands with a little more malice because they know the ball has to be perfect or it's a hospital pass. You felt that cascade all night. Another reason Branch mattered? The pre-snap talk. You can tell when a secondary is guessing. The eyes drift, the feet shuffle, the hands start pointing like windshield wipers. That wasn't Detroit. The calls were crisp. The leverage matched the call. The bait matched the leverage. And when Green Bay tried to manufacture cheap yards with quick game, Branch throttled the space like he owned the deed. There's nothing more demoralizing for an offense than calling an easy completion and getting greeted by a defender who turns it into 2nd and 8. With attitude, if you're Green Bay, you'll look back and say you left plays out there. Every losing locker room says that. But there's a reason you leave plays out there. The other side takes them. Detroit took them. And every time a drive bent toward danger, it was Branch's fingerprints at the scene alignment. Disguise, trigger, finish. This is how identities are forged in a division. You go into a hostile place, you bring your own weather, and you let your best competitors define the terms of engagement. So where do we place tonight in the arc of a season? On one level, it's one win. On another, it's an origin story for a defense that believes its ceiling lives in January. Nights like this teach lessons that become your playoff vocabulary. How to keep your hands clean when the game gets dirty. How to punish tendencies without chasing ghosts. How to ride the emotional wave without drowning in it. Branch was the instructor for those lessons. He set the chapter title and underlined the key lines. Let me put a bow on the truth versus speculation question, because that matters in this community. The claim that Brian Branch was huge against Green Bay isn't rumor mill content. It's the sober read of impact. It's backed by the flow of downs, the field position stolen, and the way the Packers' call sheet kept shrinking on anything that asked receivers to win after the catch. Is there subjectivity in any film take? Always. But the larger point stands. When your safety becomes your metronome, your defense plays in rhythm. That's not hype. That's a football fact written in grass stains. My personal take. This is the version of Brian Branch that changes Detroit's ceiling. Not perfect, not sanitized, but undeniable edge with intention, violence with aim, emotion with a governor. If he lives at that tempo and the room follows, the Lions don't just defend leads, they build walls around them. And if you're a Lions fan, you don't apologize for a night like this. You demand the encore. Let me know what you saw down in the comments. Hit like if you felt that same pulse. And if you're new here, welcome to Lions News Fan Report, where we talk about this team the way it deserves to be talked about, with detail, with heart, and with the volume turned all the way up.